Welcome back to the Deep Dive. It is Tuesday, February 10th, 2026. Now, if you're the kind of person who checks your liturgical calendar, you'll know today is the feast of Saint Scholastica.
Right, St. Benedict's twin sister. Some great stories there.
There really are, but we're actually going to pivot today. We're heading straight into what I can only call a first-century courtroom drama.
It really does feel like that, doesn't it? A legal thriller. Except the courtroom is a dusty village in Galilee.
Exactly. And the stakes are so much higher than they first appear. We're in the Gospel of Mark, chapter 7, verses 1 through 13. And look, on the surface, this whole thing kicks off looking like a fight about hand washing, a hygiene debate.
Yeah. But when you peel back the layers like we do here, you realize it's about something much, much darker.
Oh, absolutely. This is not about soap. This is about, I think you called it the politics of purity.
That's it. It's one of the sharpest critiques of a religious system you'll find anywhere. It starts with dirty hands, and it ends with a legal loophole to let you starve your own parents.
Which is just a wild trajectory for a conversation.
Yeah.
So let's set the scene. Who are the antagonists here? The text says a specific group shows up.
Right, and Mark gives us this tiny detail that's so easy to miss. It says the Pharisees and some scribes who had come from Jerusalem.
From Jerusalem.
From Jerusalem. And that little phrase, that geography, is the key to the whole scene.
Okay, so why is that so significant? Jesus is up in Galilee, right? That's up north.
He is. He's out in the provinces, the countryside. Jerusalem is the capital, its HQ. It's where the temple is, the Sanhedrin, all the religious authority.
So these aren't just his usual local critics.
No, not at all. If a delegation specifically of scribes and Pharisees travels all the way from Jerusalem to Galilee, that is a long trip. This is an official inspection.
The auditors have arrived.
The auditors have arrived, clipboards in hand. They've heard stories about this rabbi, and they are there to find compliance issues.
And they find one almost immediately. But it's not a theological error.
No, not at first.
It's lunch. The text says they see some of his disciples eating with unclean hands.
And Mark even adds a little note for us, that is, without washing them.
Okay, let's pause right there. Because my 21st century brain reads unclean hands and immediately thinks, germs.
Of course.
Like, guys, wash your hands. We know about viruses. Is Jesus anti-hygiene?
No, not at all. But we have to be so careful not to project our modern germ theory back onto this text.
They wouldn't have known about that stuff.
Not at all. When the text says unclean, the Greek word is more like defiled or common. This is about ritual purity, not physical dirt.
So even if their hands were technically clean, if they didn't do the ritual, they're still considered unclean.
Precisely. And Mark actually stops the story to explain this. He puts in a little parenthetical note for his non-Jewish readers. He says the Pharisees and all the Jews don't eat unless they do a specific ceremonial washing.
He gets really specific, too. He says, washing their arms as far as the elbow.
And that detail, as far as the elbow, just shows you the level of regulation we're talking about. It's a whole choreographed motion, like a liturgy.
And it's not just before meals. The text says when they come back from the marketplace, they never eat without first sprinkling themselves.
Sprinkling, immersing, yeah. Think about the marketplace. It's an uncontrolled space. You might bump into a Gentile, a tax collector.
A minefield of spiritual contamination.
That's exactly how they saw it. You had to create this buffer zone, and then he lists more, right? The washing of cups and pots and bronze dishes.
That sounds exhausting.
It was an entire lifestyle, a discipline. And, to be fair, they believed this was how they honored God. But here's the critical point. Mark calls this the tradition of the elders.
Okay, so define that. Tradition of the elders. Is that from the Bible? From the Old Testament?
No. And this is the hinge the entire argument swings on. You have the written law, the Torah, the Ten Commandments, Leviticus, that's the written law. But then you have centuries of what's called the oral law.
Interpretations on top of the law.
Interpretations, rulings, expansions. The goal was often to build a fence around the Torah.
A fence around the Torah. What's that mean?
Well, imagine the law is don't jump off the cliff.
Okay.
The fence is a rule that says don't go within 10 feet of the edge. The idea is if you obey the fence, you'll never break the actual law.
That actually sounds pretty sensible, a safety margin.
It starts from a good place, a desire for holiness. But over time, people started focusing more on the fence than on the cliff. This hand-washing thing, it's a fence. It's not in the written law of Moses.
But they treated it like it was.
With almost the same authority, sometimes more. So the auditors from Jerusalem ask, why do your disciples not respect the tradition of the elders?
Notice the wording.
Yeah.
Not God's law.
Exactly. They're accusing them of breaking the tradition, of being nonconformists.
And this is where I'd expect Jesus to maybe, make an excuse. Sorry, we are in a hurry. But he does not do that. He goes nuclear.
He really does. Ignores the hands completely, doesn't talk about water or pots. He just quotes the prophet Isaiah right back at them.
Isaiah prophesied rightly about you hypocrites. And then the quote, "This people honors me only with lip service, while their hearts are far from me."
Lip service. Such a powerful phrase. The Greek word for hypocrite literally means an actor, someone wearing a mask.
So lip service is just saying the lines, going through the motion.
It's mechanical. The lip service is the hand washing. It's scrubbing the bronze pots.
The choreography is perfect.
Perfect. On the outside, you look incredibly pious. But Jesus says the heart, the internal reality, is far from me.
And then comes the hammer drop. The worship they offer me is worthless.
Worthless.
I mean, that's terrifying. Imagine you're one of these guys. You've dedicated your whole life to this. You think you're the absolute religious elite. And God in the flesh says your worship counts for zero.
It means you can be religious 24/7 and be completely cut off from God. And Jesus tells them why. He says the doctrines they teach are only human regulations.
He draws that hard line. God's commandments versus human regulations.
And he says they've done a swap. You put aside the commandment of God to cling to human traditions.
Cling to. That's an interesting choice of words.
It suggests fear, doesn't it? We cling to rules because rules feel safe. They're manageable. I can check a box. I wash my hands, so I am good.
It's a lot harder to measure, do I love God with all my heart?
Exactly. Internal holiness is messy. It's invisible. External rules are safe. So they cling to the safety of the ritual.
So up to this point, it's been a general argument. But then Jesus gets really specific, and this is the part of the text that is just, it's diabolical.
The Corbin loophole.
Right. Jesus says, how ingeniously you get around the commandment of God. You can just hear the sarcasm.
Oh, absolutely. He's saying,
wow.
oh, you're clever. This isn't a mistake. It's a piece of calculated legal engineering.
So let's walk through it. He starts with the 10 Commandments.
Yep. Honor your father and your mother. Foundational. And he even quotes the penalty. Anyone who curses father or mother must be put to death, just to show how serious this is.
He's setting the stakes. This isn't a suggestion. You must care for your parents.
Correct. In that world, there's no Social Security, no pensions. Your children are your safety net. If they don't support you, you starve. Honoring them meant financial, material support.
Okay, so that's the clear commandment of God. Now, in comes the tradition of the elders with this thing called Corban.
Right.
Break that down. What is Corban?
It's a Hebrew word. It basically means an offering or a gift dedicated to God. It's property or money that you have vowed to give to the temple.
So on the surface, that sounds like a good thing. I'm donating to the temple. That's pious.
In theory, yes, but here's the loophole. Let's say you have an aging father. He needs your financial support. That's the law of Moses.
Honor your father. Got it.
But maybe you don't want to. Maybe you're greedy or you just don't get along. You want to dodge the responsibility.
So what do?
You use the Corban vow. You go to your father and you say, Dad, I would love to help you, but you see, all my resources, they're Corban.
Sorry, Dad. It's God's money now. My hands are tied.
Exactly. I have dedicated it to the temple. And here's the truly terrible part. According to their tradition, once you made that vow, you were legally forbidden from using that money for anything else.
Wait, so the religious authorities would back you up on this? They'd say, sorry, he can't feed you. That money is holy now.
Yes, that's the crux of it. The vow to the tradition took precedence over the commandment from God. The scribes would rule in your favor.
No, hang on. Did you have to give the money to the temple right away?
That's the most cynical part. Often, no. It was a deferred gift. The temple gets it when you die. In the meantime, you often still control it. You just can't give it to your parents.
Wow. So I get to keep control of my money. I look super holy for my big donation pledge. And I get to legally abandon my parents.
You have weaponized a religious rule to violate a moral law.
That is just, it's disgusting. You're using God's name to get out of doing God's will.
And that is precisely why Jesus is so furious. He says, in this way, you make God's word null and void.
Null and void. That's legal talk.
It means you've canceled it. You've used the system to dismantle the law itself. You've made God's commandment powerless.
And it's such a complete reversal. Remember, this started because they thought they were the guardians of purity.
And Jesus exposes them as the agents of corruption. They're destroying the very thing they claim to protect.
It goes back to what you said earlier. The container versus the contents.
That is the perfect analogy. The Pharisees were obsessed with the container. Is the skin of my hand washed? Is the outside of this cup pure?
Polishing the cup until it gleams.
But the contents are poison. Jesus is looking at the inside. Is there love for your parents in your heart? If the inside is rotten, it doesn't matter how clean your elbows are.
And then Jesus ends with this line that I find really haunting. He says, and you do many other things like this.
Yeah, that's almost the scariest part. It tells us Corbin wasn't a one-off. It wasn't a glitch. It was a systemic rot. This was a pattern.
It wasn't a bug, it was a feature.
Precisely. It was a system designed to make people feel religious without actually having to be good. And that's a very seductive system.
So let's bring this into 2026. Because it's easy to dunk on the Pharisees. Wow, those guys were terrible. But this critique seems aimed at human nature.
It's timeless. The temptation to honor with lip service is always with us. The temptation to substitute the hard work of the heart for the easy work of the habit.
So what does a modern Corbin look like? I mean, hopefully we aren't using vows to starve our parents.
Hopefully not, but the mechanism is the same. It's anytime we use our religious identity as an excuse not to love the person right in front of us.
Hiding behind a rule to avoid a relationship.
Think about it. A modern Corbin might be saying, I can't help my struggling neighbor right now because I'm too busy with ministry work at church.
Oof. Can't help you move, I have Bible study.
Right. You're prioritizing the religious activity, washing the cup, but you've neglected the actual human need. We use the rule to shield ourselves from the messy call of compassion.
And it connects to ideology, too. I can't be kind to that person because they're on the wrong side of things.
Yes. We have to separate ourselves from the unclean. We build fences. We create buffers. But Jesus shows us that real purity is about the heart. And if your pursuit of purity leads you to treat people with contempt, it's not God you're worshiping.
It just completely flips what it means to be devout. The disciples with their dusty fingers were closer to God than the Pharisees with their spotless elbows.
Because the disciples were following Jesus, the living word. The Pharisees were following a rule book they wrote themselves.
Following the rules versus following God. That's it.
And sometimes they overlap. Rules can be good, but when they diverge, when the rule says one thing and God's command says another, you have to know which one to choose.
Well, we have covered a lot of ground, from a hygiene inspection to a massive legal fraud scheme.
It is a dense text. But if there's one thing to take away, it's that phrase, lip service.
Don't be an actor.
Right. God isn't impressed by the costume or the script. He wants the heart.
I think that is a really powerful place to end. As we wrap up this deep dive, thank you for listening. It's a challenging text. It forces you to look in the mirror and ask if you're scrubbing the cup or filling it.
Indeed. And here's a thought to leave you with. We think of tradition as this warm, sacred thing. But in this story, tradition is the villain. So the question is, what tradition in your life, a rule you've always followed, something you've just always done, might actually be a fence that's stopping you from loving someone well?
That's a heavy one.
What rules are you clinging to that might be making your worship worthless?
A question to chew on. Check your heart, everyone. Thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive. We'll see you next time.